Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the Hampton City Marketing and Communications Department. And today we're going to be talking about the city's relationship with its veterans and its military population. And that is basically a volunteer group that has some city affiliations. My guest today is John Gately. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much for this invitation, Robin. I'm glad to be here.
It's good to talk with you. And you and I talk periodically anyway, but I think it's what your organization is. The city's residents may not even be familiar with it. Can you explain the Military Affairs Committee to us?
I'd love to, Robin, and I obviously represent the Military Affairs Committee, and I wish I could have all our members with us today. They're better looking, they're certainly brighter, they're more articulate. They may not all be fit to fight any longer, but they're all definitely very proud to serve. And before I go into any detail today, if I might, I'd like to say that even in a brightly lit studio like this, we're all standing, or in this case sitting, in the shadow of heroes. You know, even as we talk today, I'm thinking of PSC Lee A. Lewis, a Hamptonian, 3rd Infantry Division of the United States Army, and Lance Corporal Darrell Schumann, who was with the 3rd Marine Division, United States Marines, each of whom gave their lives in 2005 in Iraq. And I'm thinking of First Lieutenant Todd Weaver, who died September 9th, 2010 in Afghanistan. And we enjoy our liberties because of the sacrifice of people like those 3 young men.
And that explains, I think, to some extent why Hampton has a Military Affairs Committee, why it is such an important thing here is that we live in a military community. We have bases in our community, and we have a tradition of having a higher than average percentage of people who serve. Well, they go off to other bases, or people from other places come here. Absolutely,
Robin. And as we reflect on the sacrifice of the military, the numbers do count, and we've lost 4,500 Americans in Iraq. We've just crossed 2,000 Americans lost in Afghanistan. And if you look at Hampton, we're in the world's military capital. You know, the greatest concentration of military strength in the world, and we're right in the middle of it. And if a person lives a full, productive life here in Hampton, they can't go a day without seeing a young service member or maybe an older one in uniform on our streets. And if they haven't seen a uniformed service member, they undoubtedly have seen a veteran. You know, the 2000 census for our country said that of all cities, 100,000 or greater in population in our country, Hampton is #1 in the percentage of veterans. They measured 31% of those over 18 have served in a uniform of our nation at one time or another. I think the 2010 census suggests a slightly lower number, but the reality is between 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 of your neighbors have served in a uniform of our nation. And if there's something that binds those who have chosen to serve with the Military Affairs Committee or to support us in our efforts, it's a feeling that we can't thank those people enough.
So that is your personal motivation, is that right, John? What is your connection to the military?
I'm retired myself. A very significant number of the members of the Military Affairs Committee have served in uniform at one time or another. Many of us for full careers, others for just a few years, others are just affiliated with the military as a military member, or maybe in an activity that recognizes the significance of the military to this community. Hampton Parks and Rec is very active with us. The Hampton School System, the Community Services Board. We work with the Salvation Army and the VA Medical Center, the 911 line. They all recognize the significance of the military, the veterans, and the family members to this community. And I think the reason I'm on the MAC and the vast majority is that we really want to serve those who serve because they're giving us so much. And as we look at this young generation of warriors, many of them have deployed not once or twice, but a half dozen times to serve our nation.
Well, now, you keep deflecting the questions. When I ask you about you personally, tell us a little bit about your service and your background, John, if you don't mind.
I was blessed with the opportunity to serve. I am reluctant to share about myself because there are others who wear Purple Hearts as an example on our Military Affairs Committee, those who have shed blood in our nation's defense. We meet every second Tuesday in the military. We meet every 2 weeks as a Military Affairs Committee in the Rupert Sargent building, which is on 1 Franklin Street in Hampton. Rupert Sargent gave his life in battle. As a Medal of Honor winner, the first African-American officer in American history to receive a Medal of Honor. If I must talk about myself, I was commissioned in 1973 through the United States Military Academy at West Point. I had an opportunity to teach at the Military Academy. Served in a number of assignments, beginning in Thailand in 1974. Vietnam had just ended and we were supporting the Cambodian war effort. And finally retired as the Director of Marketing and Public Affairs for the Army ROTC program, Fort Monroe.
So you did in your career here at Fort Monroe. Where are you from, John?
I'm originally from Minnesota. I was an Army brat. So
it's a tradition for you.
Absolutely, and I will
as it is for so many of our families.
Yes, and I think many of us just recognize that there are so many who have sacrificed before us. Robin, my father was fighting in the Korean War when I was born. He is one of the Frozen Chosen, one of our nation's bloodiest battles. He was in hand-to-hand combat as a second lieutenant. I've been delighted as the chairman of the Military Affairs Committee to have an opportunity to meet some of our chosen reservoir veterans and other Korean War veterans in a local Korean War Veterans Association. We have a lot of active members of the Disabled American Veterans, the Military Order of the Purple Heart, the American Legion, and the full Veteran Service Support Organization group throughout the areas. So
a lot of people have heard of your committee. I think you call it the MAC, or for the Military Affairs Committee. But what kinds of things do you do?
Our principal interest is in promoting a healthy, strong, and cooperative relationship between the city and our military installation, Langley Air Force Base. And we extend our attention to the military in other locations throughout the Greater Peninsula as well. We're also interested in promoting the quality of life of active duty service members, veterans, and their families.
So you do a variety of sort of behind the scenes making connections, smoothing things over. I mean, tell us a little bit more.
I think the real key for the members of the Military Affairs Committee, and I've got to say, too, that this community is dedicated to the active duty force, their families, and veterans. We have a mayor, Molly Joseph Ward, who really cares about the military and taking care of our veterans. I'd say the same of our city manager. And the city council has been uniform and consistent in their effort to do whatever they can do to promote the military affairs activities to support our active duty force families and veterans. And the sorts of things that we're involved in, Robin, include addressing the homelessness issue. About 11% of our nation are veterans, but between 22 and 33% of those who are homeless right now are veterans. So when you see people, a disproportionate representation of veterans, and there are agencies like the VA Medical Center, the Salvation Army, the Community Services Board, HELP, and others that are trying to address this issue. There could be debates whether it's a local, regional, or national issue, and my response is it's all of those.
Right, and
we
need
it's
to government and it's nonprofit, and it's. But those things get messy when you have not one agency or entity that's responsible, and I think that's part of where your group comes in, is that you build bridges and make connections and try to work through the systems, many systems that are out there.
You know, you're absolutely right, and the important issues are all messy. This is a time for our nation where there are overwhelming issues that don't lend themselves to simple responses. You know, I think all of us in Hampton, if we're right-minded, care passionately about the needs of our active duty force and our veterans. And we have an attitude of gratitude. We want to do something about it. But someone said that if you have gratitude for something and you leave it unexpressed, it's a bit like having a birthday present, but not delivering it to someone. So we can't do all things for all people. The Military Affairs Committee is a very small player in a very large issue when it comes to homelessness, but we can do something. And our members want to do something. And if there are citizens out there who want to lend a hand in service to those who serve, we welcome them to our monthly meetings so that they can get a better assessment of what we do and then determine whether they want to contribute in some way through their resources or their skill set. Another issue that's very important to us is to help in the healing process. We have a lot of troops that are suffering from post-traumatic stress, others with traumatic brain injury, and suicidal ideations are a continuing concern. And we try to bring in experts. We'll be sponsoring symposia and the like to try to address those issues that are such compelling interest to our active duty force today. And even as we do all that, we try to heed the voices of the elected and appointed officials for our city so that we're doing things right based on the longer term plans of our city. While we're also listening to both the expressed and unexpressed needs of the active duty force families and our veterans.
So if, how do problems or issues that, a particular family or a particular serviceman might have, how do you hear of those and what do you do?
That's a really great question, and we're very fortunate that we have people in the city who are very much attuned to the fact that we're trying to serve as advocates for the military that need that kind of advocate. In some cases, we get a phone call on a specific request. A few examples would be we had a homeless former non-commissioned officer, veteran, who was actually living out of his car in this community. He needed someone to help him get medical attention and try to sort out some of the veteran benefits that he was receiving so that he could sustain himself. He called our Military Affairs Committee for support, and we were able to get with the Red Cross and supporting agencies so he could get the help that he needed. Another example would be a young female sailor who was getting ready to deploy into harm's way. She wanted to enroll her child in the Hampton school system, and she was just getting some inaccurate information from the school system regarding the eligibility of that child, and working with Ann Bain, who is a member of our Military Affairs Committee and serves as both community relations and legislative support to the school system. She was able to set things right and get that child enrolled into the school system. We've had a case where military members have had frustrating experiences in some military housing, and they've been in other communities. They recognize that Military Affairs Committees are appointed to serve as third-party assessors and honest brokers to assist them, and we've been able to help in that way as well. And interestingly, we've heard from a major corporation just in the last several weeks, Robin.
All right, this is the new program that you are announcing right here on Round Robin.
It's a very exciting program, and it's an opportunity for veterans who need help that maybe have not expressed it. And this is the offer that we've received. It's a major corporation that works in home improvement and supply. Everybody would be familiar with the name, but they want to remain anonymous. And what they've said is they'd like to work with the Military Affairs Committee for the City of Hampton, the MAC, to find veterans and families who need home construction, improvement, and repair projects conducted in their home. And they are willing to do it just as concerned citizens, again, wanting to serve those who have served our nation so capably in the past. And my request would be that if people are aware of veterans or family members who would like to avail themselves of this opportunity, if I might, I'd ask them to contact me, John Gately, at 1 Sugarberry Run right here in Hampton, 23669, with an attention line, Veterans Construction Support, and give us your story and the ways in which this company might be able to help you, and we'll try to further that effort.
Well, I think that's a really great way to reach out to people, is because our audience out there may know of someone. Military families don't always have as much money as the private sector, or they've got a deployed personnel and they have a leak or a problem and really just need a little assistance in getting things taken care of.
Absolutely. And one of the unique aspects, I think, of military service, and I think the military family members kind of through osmosis pick up this personality attribute, is they're reluctant sometimes to ask for help.
I think that's so true. It's true of the homelessness and the medical issues, and it's also true of something like that. They may be a little embarrassed that it's something they can't take care of themselves. They don't need to be, but it is a hard thing. It's a hard thing for anybody to reach out, but I think you're right that military families are often a little more independent and hate to ask.
And I think there's something in the military psyche. We grow up with the notion that no guts, no glory, no pain, no gain,
Right.
gut it out, stand proud, you can get through this. And what I'm trying to express now on behalf of the city, which has been kind enough to appoint a military affairs committee to try to serve specifically the interests, again, of the active duty force, their families and veterans. If you need help, ask for it. And we're here to respond to that.
And that's important because you can't help someone in that situation unless you know about it. And so whether they ask for it or whether someone sees it and knows them and asks on their behalf, we do need to know who needs that kind of help before you can do anything.
Absolutely. And I'd like to mention, too, that we continue to reflect on the sacrifice of those who have served our country in the past. And one major event on our annual calendar.
This is probably, and I probably should have started this sooner, the thing that the Military Affairs Committee is best known for among the public.
Well, there's a Day of Remembrance and Hope conducted at Gosnell's Hope Park on September 11th every year at 8 o'clock. It was begun on December 11th, 2001 by Angela Leary, who was the City Council liaison to the Military Affairs Committee. And she was kind enough to get with elected and appointed officials at the 3 attack sites, the World Trade Center, Somerset County, and of course the Pentagon. And she had soil and detritus delivered to the city of Hampton under protective police tape. Mm-hmm. And that soil was placed beside trees of what we call the Trees of Hope, now in the Soils of Justice in Gosnell's Hope Park. So that's a blessed place with soil that came from those attack sites. And we have Hampton citizens gather each September 11th to honor the memory of those 2,800 plus who died on September 11th, and particularly those first responders, the police, the EMT, the
Right.
fire and rescue folks who didn't run away from harm's way, but ran right into it. And we also recognize the over 6,000 men and women who have given their lives in our nation's service in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan since that time on that
That's
day.
what I was going to say. In some ways, the event really focuses on the first responders rather than the military. But the tie there and the overlap is those who serve us, but also the wars that have followed since that horrible event.
I think you're absolutely right, Robin, and I think the two wars that have followed are inextricably bound up with our memories of 9/11. Mm-hmm. We do have representation from the first responders. Our police chief and our sheriff and our fire chief are there each year to represent their departments. But we also have representatives from the 5 uniformed services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, there to represent their respective services. We also have Gold Star families, men and women whose sons, there have been daughters lost. We have not had one who's lost a daughter in combat recently there, but they are there to represent their families and to receive expressions of support and heartfelt gratitude from this community and nation on that event.
That is actually a very impressive event. I think it touches people's lives in a way and allows them to express feelings that don't always come out on a regular basis.
I think you're absolutely right, Robin, and one of the most important aspects of it, we always have a color guard, and the Sheriff's Department is assisting us with this. We're going to have a bugler from the Heritage of America Band playing taps. We have a rifle salute from the Sheriff's Department. Again, we have a Joint Services representation. But the most significant aspect of that day, it seems to me, is when we have citizens from throughout this community and beyond gathering around the Trees of Hope and the Soils of Justice, and we read aloud the names of everybody who was lost on September 11, 2001, and all those who've died in our nation's battles since that time. And it really is a very emotional, significant event. And I've got to tell you, we exported this event to the Pentagon in November of 2006, and there's a Tree of Hope and Soils of Justice right beside the metro station in the Pentagon, the most trafficked metro stop in Washington, D.C., in our nation's capital. And we had We had a family who had lost their daughter in the Pentagon there. We also had a family who lost a son who was on that terrible flight that slammed into the face of the Pentagon. And we were able to look at them and say, we've been reading your son or your daughter's name aloud every year on September 11th in our city. And we're going to continue to do so until our last troops come back from harm's way.
Wow, that's impressive. Well, thank you for that, John. Is there anything I've forgotten to ask you about that you wanted to add?
Thank you for the opportunity, Robin. On behalf of the 35 members of the Military Affairs Committee or so, and the city and our elected and appointed officials, I'd just like to say again, thank you, those who serve and have served. God bless you, those proudly wearing the uniform of our nation. And we pray for your protection, and we're committed to serve you.
Thank you. Thank you. There's not much I can add to that. But I do want to remind people that if you know of a veteran or military family who needs a little extra assistance in their home with repairs or construction, John gave you his address. You could also call 311 and we'll make that connection for you. And thank you for watching this episode of Round Robin.